This is the Leadership School podcast. From conflict resolution, boundaries, and customer service, we dive into what it takes to be an extraordinary leader. I am thrilled to introduce to you Amy Lafko. Amy is a leadership and organizational design expert. You're going to hear more about what that means here in this episode. She's also a main stage speaker, an author, and an advisor. She started her career as a leader in healthcare operations, and her journey there led her to launching Cairn Consulting Solutions. And at Cairn Consulting, she helps leaders build systems into their organizations to lead people first. And that's actually the name of her upcoming book that we're going to talk about today, People First. Amy is really engaging and inspiring, and this episode is so full of stories and practical tips and lessons for leaders at every stage in their career. So I know that no matter where you are in your career right now, you're going to learn a lot from Amy. We're just going to dive right in. Welcome to episode 13, People First with Amy Lafko. Anchor Podcast is the easiest way to make a podcast. Not only is it free, but it has everything you need, including creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. For me, in just a few minutes, I was able to go from an idea to a reality of having my podcast launched and out there. Anchor not only distributes your podcast for you on all platforms, but it has everything you need in one place. You can download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Well, Amy, thank you so much for being here with me. I'm so excited to interview you and talk to you today. So welcome to Leadership School podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm so glad to be here. So thank you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. It's really my honor to talk to you. You know, when I first met you, I had seen you do a performance practice of your talk, and I saw this talk and I thought, oh my gosh, like we're doing the same things. We're just talking about it in different ways. And so I was so excited to just connect with you and hear more about what you're doing. So can you just tell me a little bit more, like just tell us and my listeners here about you, about what you're doing, about your talks and
Sure.
All the things. Give me an overview.
I love all the things. That's my favorite. So I'm working as an advisor to individual clients, and where you saw me was on the speaking side because I'm really on a mission. I am on a mission to help leaders and business owners everywhere understand not only that it's important to put your people, your team first. It's also, how do you go about doing that? So it's not only the mindset of people first, it's the skill set. And I want them to have all the tools that they need. So my mission is to create an engaged workforce, and that comes from skilled leaders and empowered teams that have great team dynamics. And so that's really what I want to help people see and experience. And like I said, for me, it's definitely a mindset piece. But there's also so much in the skill set, the practical, tactical. So I want people to have the full package of not only the mindset, but then how do I carry it out? And what I've found most interesting is that even people who are really skilled leaders who get that if I put my people first, everything else will work. That if I want my business to thrive, I've got to put my people first. Even for those skilled leaders, sometimes they've set up their organization, they've designed it in a way that actually creates barriers between being a people first leader and having the people on your team feel that. And it's not because they're bad leaders, it's because they haven't designed their systems in a way that supports their mindset. So it's bringing both sides of that picture all together.
Yes, that's where you come in, is you show them how to make those systems and giving them the skills to go with that mindset. So you can make it practical. It's very practical, it sounds to me. Like,
yes,
I have these great things and great ideas and great hopes and desires. Okay, that's great, but it's not great unless you actually execute them.
Right. And I think people get overwhelmed at some of these ideas, and so I want people to know that you can take small steps every day and create this organization, this business that is designed in a way that it allows you the owner to not be exhausted, because you've set up your systems so that instead of saying, why aren't people doing what I'm telling them to do? It's, have we set up the systems so that people can hold themselves accountable? And if the answer is yes, that makes it a lot easier on you. I'm the owner.
Yeah, and I wish in the podcast you could see my expressions right now, my eyes, because they just keep getting bigger and I'm like glowing and lighting up and you just see my whole body going like, this is so great. And I've had a lot of conversations about people first. And that's a lot of what my podcast is about. We just don't I don't typically use that term people first, but it's becoming more and more talked about and more obvious because it works.
It does. Absolutely. My background is healthcare. And one of the lessons I learned the hard way is that my default mindset when I was a director of rehab was still my old mindset of a physical therapist. And as a physical therapist, I needed to be patient first because I was with my patient and that was my greatest priority. But when I shifted into a leadership role, I stuck with that default mindset of patient first. So if you're not in healthcare, think of it as customer first.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what was strangling my business. That's what was strangling my success and strangling my team to the point where they couldn't do their best work because I was strangling them with this patient first mantra. So until I shifted my mindset that my role was supporting them, that was the mind shift I needed to make in order for our practice to actually be successful.
I love hearing that story. Tell me more about that, how you realized that you needed to make that mind shift and then how you did it, because realizing and actually doing things are really difficult. And I always think about, I'm always impressed by addicts who are in recovery because they have to make this like complete 180 of who they are. And sometimes when we're making big shifts like that, not just in addiction, but in business or healthcare, like those are major changes of the way you look at your practice. How did you realize that and how did you go about it?
So not to the extent that an addict goes through or someone in recovery, but I had to hit my own version of rock bottom. I was serving as a director of rehab and acute care services, and I had, I don't know, 50, 60 team members, and I was running over them every day going, we got to get to the patient. We got to get to the patient. And I lost the team. They came in, they did the minimum work. And finally, my leader said, we can't have you here. So what are we going to do with you? And I'm like, I don't know. What are we going to do with me? And he said, I'm willing to give you another shot, but I'm going to move you to home care. And that was my rock bottom because I knew I had failed people and I was hanging on by a thread on a daily basis. And I knew it was not healthy for me or for anyone in that team. And so by being forced to start over, I just went back to basics. And I said, I know nothing about home care, so I'm just going to go learn. And instead of thinking I knew what was best for the patient, I went in and said, I don't know anything about this patient population. What do I do here? What does the team need? And when I went out and spent time with them, I realized how skilled and gifted they were. And when I asked them, what do you need? It wasn't help on how to treat those patients or how to better serve our customers. It was, Amy, I need an easier way to get, into the office to make sure I have all of my reports done. I'm like, oh, I can help you with that. And so unfortunately for me, it came through hitting my version of rock bottom. Thankfully for me, I was able to pick myself up, dust myself off because I had some phenomenal friends around me who supported me through everything.
Community is everything.
Yes. And I was able to learn from that. And because I learned from that, I don't want anyone else to go through that. I don't want anyone else to have to get to that spot. And boy, if I can help one owner or one business leader not hit that point of looking around and going, where is my team? What's happening here? That's all I want.
Well, and it's not even just the team too, because then it affects the patient. So if you're putting patient first, like you're not really putting them first when you're not taking care of your team, right?
Absolutely. And that's why I say that the patient first mindset is what strangles your business, because when you've got your customers who want to have good service, if the person delivering that service feels unsupported, feels belittled, betrayed, or is not cared for, they're not going to care for others. And again, it's a healthcare example. And you said, where did people first come from? It really came from one of my team members when I left rehab and moved to urgent care. And it was my first week in urgent care, never served as a director of operations for urgent care or operations administrator. And I went in and I was just there to observe. And everybody in the office was like, who are you? What are you doing here? Why are you here? And they had this just anger and frustration, and they took it out on patients. I could hear them. A patient would leave the office and they're like, oh my gosh, did you see what that person just did? Or the person that was greeting them, someone walks through the door sick as a dog, and their first statement to them is, where's your ID and health insurance card? No smile, no nothing. And I said to one of the front office folks, I said, what would it take for you to smile? What would it take for you to greet this sick person? And they said, I will never care about these people until you people care about me. Well, there it was, perfectly stated in this really angry, raw, unfiltered voice that no one else is willing to say out loud. But so many of our staff and our teams think it. If you people don't care about me, I am not going to care about these customers, these patients, whatever they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. That's the first thing I thought when you said that is, what courage did that person have to tell you the truth to the new boss? Like,
well, I mean, frankly, she was just had it up to, top of her head. She was so frustrated and so angry that at that point, I don't think she cared. And I think she was looking at me going, I dare you, fire me. Go ahead. Yeah. I dare you. And I didn't.
So what did you do? What was the response?
Since we were sitting at the front desk, I knew that I couldn't say, tell me more. But fortunately, I had another opportunity to interact with her pretty soon after this. It was the following week, and her manager said, Amy, we've got to write her up. She's been absent 6 times in a couple months, and that's way outside the policy. And I said, okay. And so when we went to sit down and talk with her, I said, tell me what it is about this place that makes you not want to come into work. And she said, you don't really want to know. And I said, yeah, I do. And we sat there for an hour and a half. And basically what she did was create our employee experience program by telling us everything we were doing wrong and everything we needed to change. And I said, well, perfect. Now we've got the plan. We know what we need to do. And it's just putting those systems in place to do it.
That is so amazing. And it makes me remember the first time, or not one of the first time, but a job that I had when a boss sat down and asked if I was happy and how things were going. And I was like, ooh, I'm not sure. I don't feel good about answering this. And if I would let any bit of honesty out, the response was her finger in my face, pointing at me, saying, you need to know that every employee is replaceable.
That is very true. But guess what? The next one's not necessarily better. And you know what? Even if they're fabulous when you hire them, if you treat them with that attitude, they're not going to be fabulous for long.
I didn't stick around. And you know what? I mean, it was like I was already planning my way out. I was in that job the shortest time I'd ever been in a job because it was so terrible. But the day that I submitted my resignation, they called an emergency team meeting. And I thought, well, what's going on? And they closed the entire program.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, wow. Yeah. Yep.
So it didn't work, and I don't know if it was really just the program itself, but, obviously something wasn't working, and maybe treating people the way they were treating people, really not giving us the resources. So I love that you did that. And so did you start just one piece at a time, like making a list and start implementing those things that the woman
did? And it took a little over a year to really turn the ship, but we got it moving in the right direction. And I think, that's a lesson I talk about in the book. And it's also something that was deeply valuable to me, was this idea of asking better questions. Because I must confess, I am no saint. And so when she pointed her finger at me and was like, well, I will never care about these people, my insides were going, oh, yeah, I'll show you. But then I put on my leader hat, I put on my leader heart, and I said, tell me more. And
Yeah.
that was the powerful pivot for her as well. Because instead of doing what your boss did, which is point her finger and say, I don't want to hear that, or you're the only one, instead, she realized someone actually wanted to hear her story. And that's really powerful.
Those 3 words, tell me more. And that just implies that I'm just here to listen to what you have to say. I'm not here to fix you, tell you you're wrong. Just tell me about your experience. Did she stay? Did she stay on that year?
She did. She stayed on. Actually, I left before she did. I started my consulting company before she left. So yeah.
That's amazing. I love that. But what you did is you said you put on your leader hat. You did. You took on the ownership of that. You accepted responsibility. You said, I need to listen, because that's what leaders have to do is listen and take responsibility. And you said, okay, I'm going to hear these people. I'm going to make her feel safe where she can tell me the truth. And she probably didn't care whether she was safe or not at that point, but still you made her, you let her talk to you and you heard what she had to say. But not only did you just say, okay, and you heard it and then, okay, go back to work, you actually made those changes. You actually listened and did those things. And that changed everything. And it changed everything for you because now you have this whole business teaching people to do that, which is amazing.
Well, and I think the biggest thing, and we are in this, and if I hear the word unprecedented one more time, we are in a situation unlike any other, at least when we think about it on the surface. And I am working with clients who I was working with before the shutdown and who I started working with during or after the shutdown. And we see the signs of help wanted. We see on the news that, nobody wants to work and there's tons of jobs out there and nobody's willing to fill them. And yet there's all these stories. And I see one of my clients who, with 70 team members, they shut everything down. And then when they brought it back up, all 70 of them came back. And then this past December, so they're back since, I think July they came back. So they came back in July. December, they did their primary engagement survey, their big one for the year, not their pulse surveys. They had 98% employee experience scores of satisfaction and engagement because they took care of their people before this happened. And then I have another clinic who 65% of their team chose not to come back. And they called me and said, we don't know why people aren't coming back. And I said, well, let's take a look. And it's all about that people side.
Mm-hmm. The company who had the 98% satisfaction, have they increased in their revenue as well as their business? Has that grown, even though they're investing time and money into their employees?
They've actually added a new location. They are looking at adding a few more diversifying their portfolio a little bit this year in terms of services they provide. So yeah, they are definitely growing.
Because people get excited about being at work and doing the work and doing more. They want to get excited and make it grow. They don't want to, when you're not encouraging people to grow and to be excited about being there, they're just going to do the bare minimum. They're not going to help you make money because why would they?
Right. And it's funny that you say that. 2 of my other clients are adding locations this year too. And it's because they were so grounded in this people first, whether they realized it or not, whether I was helping them and then they had that aha moment or we built the structures they needed. But there are these stories of people doing really well. And when you listen to the story, it's always about people, owners and leaders putting their people first. When Jason had to call and say, listen, Amy, we got to shut down. There's a huge implication if we stay open. And I don't know what to do because I really care about my people. But this is a time I have to put finances first. I said, Jason, you didn't put finances first. You still kept your people first in your thinking, recognizing the business needs. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging the business needs. Yeah.
Well, if the business shut down, you don't provide for 70 people and their families and all of those things that they're doing. You have to make these decisions so that they have something to come back to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's been a really, really important lesson.
Well, tell me about making some of those big decisions as a leader. Some of the lessons that you've learned, or the important things that have kind of you're taking on as though when you're that person making those decisions and you're having to be that kind of at the top. Like, how do you go about that? How do you not just have the courage to make that decision and the ownership, but the grit, the taking care of yourself in the midst of all that, like I said earlier, all the things, all the things that go with that leadership position.
I think the most important thing, because when I talk about people first, sorry, I got winded there, but when I think about people first, I like to remind business owners that guess what? They're people too. And so when I say you come before the customer, they're like, no, no, no. Yes, you come before the customer. So number one, realize who your people are. And it's everybody in the organization, including yourself. So that's the self-care component. The other thing is, I just had a client who we were helping someone exit the organization. And they said, Amy, we've got to start corrective action. We've got to do this. And I was sort of just jumping in with this client. And I said, well, tell me about the process all along the way. And they're like, well, no, we're writing them up today, and then they'll get a week to improve. And then if they don't improve, we're going to let them go. I said, well, that's an interesting approach. I said, do they know that they're not doing a good job? Oh, yeah, they know. I said, how do they know? And so we talked about that. And he said, I have to go have this conversation. I said, what percent, 0 to 100%, how committed are you to helping this team member turn it around? And he said, I know this isn't the right answer, or at least I know it's not the one you want to hear. I'm only 85% committed, Amy. I said, okay, that is the answer I want to hear because it's the truth. I said, but then let's talk about what can you commit 100% to doing today? And he said, I can promise you 100%, Amy, that I am going to go in here and I'm going to do my best to be clear about what's not working and what they need to do differently. I said, I will take that 100% all day long. Mm-hmm. Because the most important thing for us to realize as leaders is that people are whole. And even if they're exiting your organization, there are very few people who are truly bad people. They're just not a right fit for the role. And that's what we're talking about, the mismatch between the person and the role and the needs of the organization, not they're a bad person.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about this a couple episodes ago with my friend Dr. Rich Gathro, and he just said, you're just in the wrong seat on the bus. You're just, this isn't the spot for you, but I'm going to make sure that you have the spot that works for you because we want you to be a whole person. If you're not going to be in this seat, we're going to find another one at another organization. Like, we're going to find a place that works for you and your skills and your personality and the things that work because we want you to have joyful life and we don't want you to be miserable in your life, and you'll be miserable if you're here. So will we.
That is one of the really important things in organizations. And no matter how big or small, organizations have some level of promotions. And even if you're really small, the opportunity is to, become an owner. But unless there's only one level, you've got some opportunity for promotion, but they're still limited. I work with a really large company. It's a multinational, and they have tons of rungs on the ladder, but there's still a finite number of rungs. And so the only thing motivating people to stay at that company cannot be the next rung on the ladder. I work with a lot of organizations that maybe have like a frontline manager, and that's it. And then it's the CEO or the owner. And so it's about developing them regardless of career advancement / promotion. But what skills do they want to develop? How can you help them grow, even if it's not growth in a title change or a promotion in the way that we think about it?
Wow. Like, I'm just sitting back and really thinking through that because I've never thought in that terms. I've always thought in the term of like going up the rungs, like going up the ladders. And um, but you can always expand. You can always expand no matter where you are.
I am going to give you a perfect example, and it's outside of healthcare. In,
Before you guys should see Amy's face right now because she just lit up. It's so fun.
so I live in a small town in Pennsylvania, and we have, a handful of restaurants. And there is this one restaurant, and think about it. In a restaurant, you have hostesses, waiters or waitresses, the bartender, the bar back, the chef, and the owner. There's not a lot of hierarchy because oftentimes if you're the bar back, the promotion is to be the bartender. And if you're the bartender, you're not going to get promoted to chef per se, and you certainly aren't going to get promoted to owner. But in my town, the one restaurant is opening a second restaurant, and it's going to be their high-end version, like the 3-hour steak dinner kind of place. And the waiter, Win, is like, I said, when's that new restaurant going to open? And he goes, oh, and he launches into all of these details. I said, Win, you seem to know an awful lot about this. He's a waiter. And he said, oh my gosh, it's great. The owner's letting me help with some of the planning for the opening. And he's helping me learn how to do, table layout so that we make sure we maximize the space. And he's letting me actually help with some other parts of opening this new restaurant. Win will stay with this guy for as long as possible because, wow, there's no chance he's going to get promoted to owner. But you know what? He's learning so much. And he's growing so much. He's taking stuff off of the owner's plate. And yet they're both getting something out of it. And that guy's not going to leave and go get another waiter job somewhere else, even if they pay more.
Never. That's amazing. And what a cool thing for the owner too, to say, I see this employee that I can like bring up to do these things,
Absolutely. And you never know. Someday he might say, I'm ready to retire. You want to buy the restaurant? Because I've prepped you for that. But even if it's not, we've got this different type of mentality about what growth can be, even for a frontline waiter.
Oh, that's such a good story. Thank you for sharing that. Oh, I love your smile and just the excitement in sharing that story. It's so fun. And it makes me think, okay, like in the little jobs that I've had, I mean, I myself like tried to expand and think, but having other people do that for you, okay, how can you do better in this role? Or like what other things that this person is ambitious, so how give this person more ambition and bigger projects even within their tiny role. That's so cool.
And think about it as the owner. Remember, we talked about the owner's a person too. They're part of people first. If he got to take one thing off of his plate by having someone super excited to do that one thing, that frees him up for something else. And maybe it's simply that he gets to go home an hour earlier, or once a week, he doesn't have to get up at the crack of dawn to do something. Or on that day that the restaurant's closed, he's not working that whole day.
Yeah, that's amazing. Ugh. It's so cool. It's just fun to think about how when we expand when we allow others to expand, how we expand and everything does around us too. And it grows and we all become bigger and better.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, tell me, I mean, I like to talk about integrity a lot, and I think that we've been kind of talking about that a lot already, but tell me more about what it means to you specifically to lead with integrity.
It was interesting because you told me that we were going to talk about integrity, and I just had a push on my integrity the other day.
Oh.
And it was really an interesting moment for me because as much as I know the value of being a straight shooter, and I know the value of really helping the people I support be their best, I sometimes focus a little too much on being nice. I want to be nice about things. And yet someone said to me recently, Amy, nice is self-serving. Nice is about you feeling good about being nice to someone else. It's me trying to please so that they like me. And so he said to me, isn't it better to stay in integrity by being kind? I said, well, what's the difference between nice and kind? And he said, kind is in service to them. Kind is you saying, this is going to be hard for me because I'd rather just be nice, but I need to be kind by being honest. And even in the book, I talk about one of my clients sort of gave me this nickname. She said, you're my queen of compassionate candor. And that's what I want. And compassionate candor is kindness. So when she kind of gave me the queen of compassionate candor moniker, I said, that is one of my core values, is to have compassionate candor. And so for me to be in integrity, to be in authenticity, integrity, and honesty with myself, I need to be compassionate while being candid and kind, as opposed to nice. And I have a client situation right now, and we're in a really important moment. And I was trying to nicely say, this is the direction that would be better serving you. And I wasn't making the point firm enough. And so we had a call the other day, and I said, I've got to be in integrity here as a person, and I'm close to being out of integrity, because to me, I need to be authentic, I need to be honest, and I need to have candor with you compassionately. So we need to talk about some things today that are going to be pretty hard, but know that it's coming from a place of compassion.
Wow. And that's the also leading with example that you're doing. You're leading by actually doing those things.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I learned so much from you. We've known each other a short time, but I've learned so much just getting to know you. But as you're talking, I'm like, man, I have a decision coming up that I'm gonna use that, because I've been trying to be loving, but I think sometimes the way I love is just trying to be nice. And I've struggled with this my whole life, and boundaries has taught me a lot about it, but it's like a boundary thing too.
Mm-hmm.
Boundaries doesn't mean you're responsible for other people's emotions. You're responsible to them, but not for them. You're not responsible for the way you feel. You're responsible to be honest and be truthful, and to be yourself and be true to yourself too. Relationships. That's how you do things. Then you don't. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I'm fine. I'm fine. You know.
Well,
you don't.
and for me, the other part of being nice is, I want them to keep me. I want to stay on and work with them and partner with them. But my desire to partner with them can't supersede my integrity of doing my job with them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Yeah, I have a lot to learn. We're all learning. I think we all learn from each other. And that's why I do this podcast, because I feel like I'm a strong leader, but I have so much to learn in leadership. But we all do. There is no leader out there who's going to say, I've learned everything about leadership.
Absolutely. Every day there's something to learn. And, I think about that when people say to me, what are some really important things I would tell other leaders? And, make mistakes and know you're going to make them, and it's okay. And, my coach would always say to me, Amy, what's the lesson? What's the lesson? What's the universe trying to teach you right now? And so for every mistake or failure, it's asking myself, what's the lesson here? And always seeking out mentors and coaches. You and I have talked about that several times. To me, it's one of the most valuable things that I've been fortunate to have mentors throughout my several professional careers at this point.
Yeah, it really makes a difference. And to be the person to mentor others too. And it doesn't mean that you have all the answers. It just means you might be 1 or 2 steps ahead of where they are.
Yeah.
And a mentor is just someone who can be there and give some experience. And but I love how you're talking about the way you're leading by example, and you're caring for people, and you're taking that responsibility and that ownership. Like, that's what we do as leaders.
Mm-hmm.
That is leading.
Absolutely.
That is it.
Yes.
That is leading with integrity, is being that honest. And like, I love that compassion that you're talking about, compassion with candor. It's an incredible way to lead.
Yeah. And it's not easy for me. It's not the easiest approach, because of just my natural behavioral style. So I've worked on it and I've gotten a lot of great support so that I can get better at it over time because of how important it is in the work that I do. And that's the reality. We don't know everything. And you're right. We never will know everything. So it's simply being willing to say, here's where I know I need help. Can you help me with that? And then where do you see my blind spots are, and working on those as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, you mentioned it earlier. You mentioned your book. So I want to talk all about it because you have a book coming out in August. Tell us about your book. What's it called?
So the book is called People First, not surprising. And it's about the idea that this is a proven method for an exceptional healthcare practice. And what I tell people, and I've actually had some folks read it and they said, Amy, the stories are definitely healthcare focused, and that's who I wrote it for. But the lessons and the strategies are universal. So I wrote it for owners of practices who are great clinicians, and no matter what your business is, more often than not, you got into your business because you were great at something. I work with a group of yoga and Pilates studios owners, and they took Pilates and loved it, so they became studio owners. And that's the same thing in healthcare practices and so many business owners. So they're great at that technical aspect of the work that they now are doing on a larger scale. They don't necessarily have the skill set of leadership because they've devoted their education to developing their clinical skills. So I provide pieces of leadership skills. And interestingly, that was the hardest part for me in the book because there's millions of fantastic books out there about leadership. And I'm like, how do I distill that down? And I realized I don't want to distill it down. I'm going to give you a list of, 27 other awesome books about leadership that you should read. And I focused the leadership chapters purely on things that I think can be overlooked. Compassionate candor being one, powerful questions, and the power of the pause, those types of things from a leadership standpoint. And then the bulk of the book is around organizational design. I want people to see that there are ways you can structure your business that build in moments of connection, moments of collaboration, so that your team knows that you're putting them first. We create these job descriptions that are just ridiculous laundry lists of everything you might possibly someday do in your job. Yet they don't tell you what's really important, what the greatest priorities are. And more importantly, what does success look like? How do I know if I've done that part of the job description? Yeah, so it's those types of tactical things that I layer in that are the organizational design of putting your people first, in addition to aspects of leadership for putting people first.
Oh, I cannot wait to read this book. It's going to be so exciting. And I'm not in healthcare, but I help with health and wellness area, but it's all about to apply across the board. I remember I was on a flight on my way to my first big girl interview, like the one right out of college. It was a real career type job for me. On the flight, there was a woman sitting next to me and she said, okay, here are the questions that you need to ask. She had a lot of interview experience. I'd never done this before. And the only one I remember was, you need to ask, what does success look like to you in this position?
Yes.
That in every job interview ever since. And I always tell people to ask that question because it's so helpful.
Oh my gosh, yes. It clarifies everything. And that's another area where people struggle, is how to ask deeper interview questions that are really going to get to the bottom line. And we've all learned about behavioral interviewing. Well, that's actually only the first step in the question series. Tell me about a time you had this happen. Great, you've told me a good story. How did it impact you? How did it make you feel? What do you do differently now? That's the stuff I care about. I care about the story because it tells me you've had an experience, but I want to know what you learned from that experience. I want to know what you do again. And I want to know what you do in my organization because of that experience.
Or if that kind of thing happened here, what are you going to do differently? Because I don't want you to repeat that, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I can just share one other aspect of the book because,
please.
my company name is Cairn and I am obsessed with Cairns. So I want to make sure that if anybody has pictures of Cairns or you're out hiking and you see one of those piles of rocks, send me a picture. But cairns are these beautifully balanced piles of rocks that hikers rely on for direct.
Like the one sitting behind you in your
Ones behind
screen.
me. And cairns, in the way that I've structured the book, I've built a cairn to guide your path to people first. And the cairn is built of 4 rocks. And the first rock is think. And so the first component, the first module of the book is think. And it's your mindset, and not just your individual mindset, the organization's mindset and intentions in the way it carries out its work. And then we talk about the second rock being say, and individually as a leader or owner, what you say, how you say it. But as a business, what's your communication systems of say? And then we move to the third rock, which is what you do. And the second and third rock can absolutely be interchanged because sometimes your words lead your actions and vice versa. But the third rock is the do. And again, we oftentimes think it all comes down to what the leader does. But gosh, there's so much that the organizational design can do to make the experience better for the team members. And then the final rock, the pinnacle rock, is grow. And so I used the imagery of cairn as a way to convey the 4 components of being a people-first organization and a people-first leader. And it's what you think, say, do, and how you approach growth.
Oh, wow. And yes, all those things happen, and uh, and being intentional about them.
Yes.
If you get stuck in a situation as a leader and you haven't thought through your values, like the way you're going to respond, you're just stuck and you're going, I don't know. Like, what am I going to say? Something that you regret or say something that takes you the direction that you don't want to go, but having those planned out, well, you'll create those systems. That's amazing. That's so cool.
Well, and that's why the foundational rock is think. Because as long as you always go back to what's our organization's core purpose, our mission, what are our values, what is that organizational design around think, what are the intentions behind the work? And, as an example, it's when people do quote unquote performance reviews, annual performance reviews, right? A lot of people's intentions with these is to get them over with. My intention in doing a performance review is because I have to comply for some regulatory reason, or, the team thinks they want them. So we make a 5-statement performance review that it's check, meets, does not meets, or exceeds. And I go in and I ask an organization, what is meets? Well, I don't know. It's just how I felt that day. What does it take to exceed? I have no idea. And then you ask the team member, hey, you got an exceeds here. Why? I don't know. It's a checklist. So the intention is purely to check it off my list instead of looking at it as a way to accelerate the performance for the team member.
Yeah, to actually see and to hear what their thoughts are too. This is a chance to check in with each other. It's not I think they're scary. When your boss calls you in, I remember at a job when every time my boss would call me in, I go, I thought I was about to get in big trouble, but usually they were like, hey, I just have a question about this. And it took me, about 6 to 8 months before I was calm going into her office and realized it. But, I think those performance reviews are that same awkward, I'm scared something's going to happen, but they don't have to be. They can just be like, how are we doing?
Here's something really, again, I clearly practical, tactical. Here is a simple thing that every one of your listeners could do as a leader. You can go back to every team member you support and you could ask a few simple questions. What's going well? Who else on the team should be recognized? What are you personally working on right now in your job? And what do you need from me? Boy, if you go back and ask those 4 questions to each member on your team, you've instantly upped your level of leadership, because suddenly people are going to say, whoa, they're taking the time to really listen to what I need. They're asking me who else should be recognized. I guess recognition is important in this organization. Because then what you do is you say, hey, Bob, I heard that Jamal recognized you for this, and I just want to say great job on that.
Yeah. And then you build the team and the camaraderie within the team, and people get excited about celebrating each other. I love celebrations. I talk about celebrating a lot, but because I'm not good at them. and so because I'm not good at them, I have to really think through them, and I deeply understand their value now. I've had to act their value. But when you're celebrating each other, it adds that joy that you need to go through every day, like when you're working with someone next to them for years and years and years,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. I'm just so excited about your book, People First. When and how can I get this book?
Absolutely. So August 24th is the actual publication date. You can get it at any online retailer. So Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, any place like that. We are going live with pre-launch pre-orders in the next week or two. And so if people want to learn more about the book or sign up to get more information about the launch so they don't forget the date, or if they want to go ahead and pre-order the book, they simply go to www.thepeoplefirstbook.com.
Okay, great. Because by the time this podcast comes out, it will be time to do the pre-orders. So
Absolutely.
Did you say The People First?
Thepeoplefirstbook.com.
Okay, and we'll put that link in the show notes so that people can click on that and head straight over and pre-order your book. Make sure you pick up a copy of Amy's amazing book, and all these lessons that we're talking about today are going to be in there detailed for anybody to really up their leadership game and to change the way they're approaching their organizations, their companies, and not even at work too, like probably at home and in your family and your volunteer jobs or what your church or wherever, That's so great. I love it. Okay. Well, I want to wrap up with two really fun questions, and you've kind of already answered one of them, but I'm going to go ahead and just ask it directly anyways. What is maybe one piece of leadership advice that really stands out to you? Maybe that someone's given to you or that you've given, but tagline, just one really strong piece of advice that we can send off our listeners with.
Ask better questions. You do not need to have all the answers. And if you do think you have all the answers, you're missing something important. So ask better questions.
Yeah. And how do you know when you're asking better questions? You just keep practicing, right?
Yes, absolutely. And one of the best ways to ask better questions is to make sure there's no yes or no answer. We've all heard about open-ended questions. The other thing that you need to be careful about when you're asking better questions is not telling your answer in the question. It can't be, this is a great podcast and I think that you're really doing a good job and I think you could improve it in this way. What do you think about that? No, it's what do you think's great about your podcast? What do you think you could improve about your podcast? That's all.
Yeah. And not being the one to make that decision for somebody.
Exactly. Right. Here's the path I'm going to send you down, but I want your answer in whatever direction you want, except it's going to be in this direction because I forced you to go that way.
Yeah, that's coaching 101.
Exactly. And you said it earlier, tell me more. In some ways, it's not a question, but in reality, it's the best powerful question you can ask because it's as open-ended as anything could be.
Or what else?
Yes.
What else? Tell me more.
A funny one. One of my and my team members used to call me out on it all the time. I'd be like, "Help me understand," and they'd be like, "Wait, we know, Amy. Help you understand?" And I'm like, "Yeah, help me understand." And they're like, "Do you really understand?" And are just quizzing us. Like, is this sarcastic? Help us, because we got along. I mean, this was all said in love. But I'm like, no, I really want you to help me understand it from your point of view. And they're like, "Oh. All right, so then help me understand sort of like this. Yeah, we know, Amy, you want help understanding it, so here's the answer."
I like that they had the fun going back and forth.
Oh yeah, the answer about it.
I used to have a friend who I'd ask her, she would drive me home occasionally. I worked in Washington, D.C. where I didn't have a car. You took the bus and the train everywhere, the metro. But occasionally friends would give me a ride home. And every time we drove home, I would always ask her, what was the best part of your day and the worst part of your day? Well, after about like a year, even though she only drove me home occasionally, I'd get in the car and she'd go, okay, the best part of my day was. I never even asked the question.
I love it.
Yeah, that was fun.
Awesome.
That was fun. Okay, so we're wrapping up here. Is there anything else that you feel like you really want to make sure that we hear today?
I think the most important thing is to give yourself grace, and I know that you've talked about this, and it is so important. Give yourself grace when you make a mistake. Give yourself grace, but don't make it into an excuse. Own it, but be willing to say, I'm human. And that's so important for leaders, whether you're in a leadership role or you're leading yourself, you're leading your family, you're leading your colleagues, whatever it is. Give yourself grace without giving yourself an excuse.
Yeah, I love Sha'Carri. Is it Sha'Carri Richardson? Is that her name? Who, the Olympic runner who was just not allowed to perform because of a marijuana use. And her public response was, I am human.
Yes.
That was all she responded. And that's such a good response because yes, she is. She's human.
Exactly. We all are. And that's my personal thing. But as a leader, my one last takeaway is my favorite tagline, which is grow your people to grow your business.
Absolutely. Well, that's everything we've been talking about here today. And it's like wraps it all up and sums it all up. I'm so honored to talk to you. Cannot wait for your book to come out. The launch is August 24th, right?
Absolutely.
Cannot wait to read it and be part of that with you. And I'm just thank you for being here with me today. And yeah, I guess that's all I have to say. I'm just so grateful.
Well, thank you. This has been wonderful. I love chatting with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I truly mean it when I say that I'm honored that you would spend time listening to the things that I have to say. You can support me by subscribing to this podcast or by telling your friends, family, coworkers about it, and also by letting me know what you think. It really helps me to know what you like, what you don't like, things that you want to hear about, learn about, how I can share my expertise with you. I am here for you to serve you. Again, thank you so much for listening, and let me know how I can continue to support you being the awesome leader that you are.